chicken. And someone brought pudding. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate everyone who is here for this panel. We really want this to be an interactive discussion and a conversation about living with an STI. So any questions that you might have, we're not going to do questions at the end, it's going to be questions throughout. And if it feels like a good place to take a question, I will call on you, and if not, I will kind of bookmark it and come back to you later. So the first thing I want to do is introduce myself and my co-panelists. I am so honored to be presenting with these people. They are an absolute joy to work with. And so I'm going to start at the far end with Raul to talk about just who we are, what we do, and what attracted you to this panel.
My name is Raul Q. My given name is actually Raul Quintero. I am social media coordinator for one of the largest youth service organizations in the U.S. I'm here because I have a passion for sex-positive, non-stigmatizing messaging. And Mother Brittany, forgive me for saying this, but that I didn't. It stems from my former parents, my former sex negative, my former self who used to be super stigmatizing towards those living with HIV. This coming from a man who grew up in a predominantly gay family and whose uncle died as a result of AIDS-related causes in the early 90s. Who didn't understand his own sexuality as a teenager and would use the words with his first boyfriend, like, "Are you clean?" But neither of us had ever been tested. But we assumed that because we were each other's first boyfriend and possible sexual experience that we were clean. And then though we cheated on each other, we still proceeded to believe that we were clean. And then when he left me for Indonesia, I believed that I was HIV positive for about 7 years after that, when abstinent. I was terrified of my own sexuality and health, and stigma led me to not be tested, and to not go to test it, not to have sex, to be terrified of sex. And then I went to college, like as a returning student, and I became interested in sex. And that form of stigma drove my passion to educate myself. And now drives me every day at work to provide that message to people. And who, as wonderful friends who live every day and to give them support while they live with HIV and they're managing, living with this virus and everything that they're doing and the actions that we do, the activism and the messaging that we do online and whatever face-to-face talk that we do with anybody when we discuss this virus and how we can move forward in a progressive way in 2014 to talk about, let's talk about the virus now and not what it was meant to be. Because I didn't know that experience, I know this now. And so that's why I'm here, not as an authority figure, but as someone who's seen the light and who understands that we need that message in regards to discussing those in the information.
Hi there, I'm Kate McCombs, and I'm on this panel because I was having a discussion with Ashley. We were talking about life and sex ed and stuff as we do, and we got into a discussion about public health. I have a master's in public health. I moved to Australia to get it because I wanted to do it somewhere where they had a universal healthcare system, because I knew what effect that has. Woohoo! Yeah. What an effect that has on sexual health and well-being and access and social justice. My journey into public health leads back into this conversation with Ashley. When I was just starting out, realizing that sex ed was a real job that I could have, I was looking to who were the people that I saw doing the work that I most wanted to do. Francisco actually in his last presentation about entrepreneurial IQ was talking about find your heroes and look at what their values are and follow that in your career. And these people that I really admired had masters of public health. What is this public health thing? And I took classes and was introduced to harm reduction. And I remember the first time someone explained this concept to me, my eyes were just all huge. And for those of you who were at the opening plenary last night, Melissa was talking about this as like a life philosophy, and at its core, it's about meeting people where they're at. And that's such a core value for me. And I, when I was new to the public health field, felt like that was a shared value. But as I got further along in public health, I learned that not everyone is quite on board with that message. Sometimes the focus is so strongly on disease prevention that we stigmatize people in the process instead of connecting with empathy and our shared humanity. And in my opinion, I don't think that we should pursue disease prevention at the expense of that empathy and creating an accepting space. And in this conversation with Adrial, she's like, do you want to be on the panel and talk about that? So that's why I'm here.
I'm Adrial. I just got a nosebleed before this, so I feel kind of muffled. So pity me as needed. So I got herpes about 8 years ago, and when I first got herpes, I felt so alone, and a lot of that loneliness came from my own beliefs about myself, that I was unlovable, all of those deep down body things that I already had, and herpes was kind of magnifying glass for me to start looking at those things in me. So it became kind of a self-development journey, because I refused to actually be so alone, and I was alone for years. And it was a self-induced loneliness. So I started something called the Herpes Opportunity. I started blogging about it, and I started building community around it, because as a lot of you know, I imagine, shame can't exist in community. When it's talked about openly, then people feel less alone. They feel more connected. So whenever I do this work, it continues my own healing journey for myself as others continue to heal, and that is a beautiful cycle. And that's what I stand for. And we do weekend workshops. People fly in from all over the world to heal their own shame with themselves first. And this discussion will be around stigma, but I believe that stigma, the healing of stigma is a byproduct to us loving ourselves and us accepting ourselves. So that's what I stand for, beyond just herpes and beyond just STIs, that all of us as human beings, it can really blossom.
And I'm Ashley Manta. I'm a sexuality educator and writer and coach. I was sexually assaulted when I was 13, and then again in college, in grad school. And when I was sexually assaulted in grad school, I got herpes. And that was back in 2009. And it totally rocked my world. Because not only was I coping with the aftermath of an assault, but I was also coping with this thing that all I had heard my entire life is that herpes was this awful thing, and that no one would ever love you if you had herpes, and that no one would ever want you if you had herpes. And so I had a lot of shame and a lot of self-hatred, and through talking about it with other people that had herpes, and through last year coming to Catalyst and meeting Reed Mahalko, who is out about having herpes, I said, I want to do that. I want to be somebody who's not afraid to say I have herpes in public and on the internet. And so I did. I took a deep breath and I took the plunge, and I came out about having herpes online. And I blogged about it on different websites, and I've done interviews about it. And every time I share that, the reactions are either, me too, or, wow, it's so great that you can talk about that. And that's really why I wanted to create this panel, because I want us to start changing the conversation around STIs as something horrible, awful, oh my gosh, you know, and treating people with STIs as lepers, and really start treating each other as people. Because the number one STI is the common cold. Right? So, but we don't think of it that way. The common cold isn't stigmatized the way that herpes herpes or HIV or the other STIs are. So I want us to kind of examine that, and that's part of what we're going to do today. So to start, we're going to do a little exercise if you're up for it. How many people are up for an exercise? Getting out of your seats, because we don't want to just lecture at you for the next 60 minutes. We really want this to be interactive. So, if you're willing, how many people in here feel like you're pretty well educated about STIs? You feel like you're pretty compassionate around STIs? Okay, yeah, most people. That's cool. So we're going to test that a little bit. I'm going to let Adrial explain the exercise, because this is something that he does during the Herpes Opportunity Weekend, which I was privileged to be a staff member for last summer.
Great. So everyone who wants to participate, and of course those who don't, that's fine. No shame, right? So stand up if you want to participate. And you can put your stuff under the seat or wherever, because you're going to be moving around. So once you stand up, go ahead and walk up to someone else who's standing up that you don't know, right? Okay. Find someone now. Yes, yes. All right. Okay. Quiet. I love that we're already starting conversation here. Okay. So what's going to happen here? So I'm going to set the context, right? So this person across from you, this might actually be true and it might not, but we're going to imagine that you're on a date with this person. Okay? And you're sitting across a table from them, or you're sitting in your living room, wherever it feels comfortable for you to actually disclose that you have an STI. Okay? You get to choose what STI that is. Okay? Exciting, right? Choose your own STI. So this isn't just going to be an exercise, I have herpes, right? Like actually put yourself in the place of a person who is about to disclose to a potential sexual partner. You guys haven't had sex yet, right? You're developing a connection. It's gotten to the point where you're like, okay, yeah, I think it's time that I tell you something. So do the lead-in, whatever feels appropriate, and you're going to switch partners. So the person with the shortest hair is going to go first. Okay. So you've determined that. So now everyone close your eyes, okay? And this exercise is as real as you allow it to be. So to just actually sink in, if you are the one with the shortest hair and you're going to go first, actually become that person. Maybe you do have an STI, maybe you don't. But in this moment, you're sinking into this conversation you're about to have. What does it feel like in your body? Do you feel tight? Do you feel like you have access to your self-acceptance? Any of those things, just notice whatever's coming up. And the person who's going to be receiving, the person with the longer hair, actually put yourself in the position of being on this date with this person. And they're about to share something important with you and be in the space of receiving, because you're going to be in this spot soon. So when you're ready, open your eyes and
we're going to give you 2 minutes, and then we'll switch. All right, so.
All right, so everyone, slow down. Great. So some quick shares before we switch, like maybe 2 quick shares. What was that like for you, maybe receiving it or giving it? Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to switch. But before we do that, everyone close your eyes again. And again, a reminder that this is as real as we want it to be. You can actually sink into this role and feel it fully. So we're switching roles now. The longer-haired person now has an STI. Choose your own STI, and actually settle into the space. Like, it might actually help to visualize what if you had an STI and you're about to disclose to a partner. Where would you feel most comfortable? Would it be in your living room? Would it be in your dining room? Would it be be on the bed, wherever that happens to be, actually visualize that room and that you're there right now. And whatever sort of anticipatory feelings might be coming up, those be and notice those. And open your eyes and begin.
Oh, I know. I think that's good.
Raise your hand if you can hear me. Thank you. Okay. So how was that? We'll get two quick shares. How was that either receiving or giving? All right, great. Thank you.
So as you kind of settle back into your seats, I want you to kind of take a second to just notice what's going on in your body and what's going on for you. What did you think was going to happen when you went to disclose and what actually happened? Like, was there a disconnect? And if not, that's cool. And if there was, that's okay too. Like, the whole idea of this was to kind of shine some light on potential blind spots that we might have, even as really sex positive professionals, and to really kind of get ourselves in the headspace of this is what some people live with every day. So I think it can be useful for compassion purposes. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is stigma. If you would. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Miko, for being our panelist. Stigma is culturally sanctioned shame. And there is a lot of stigma that surrounds STIs and living with an STI and even getting tested for STIs. So I was hoping that Raul and Kate could talk a little bit about public health and stigma and like how that's being used as a prevention tactic. Kate, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that gets talked a lot about in public health circles is fear-based health promotion. How many of you have seen a fear-based health promotion campaign? Most of us, yeah. Can any of you name some particularly memorable ones? Yeah, it's almost funny. Like I recommend looking it up on YouTube just because it's so. There's this one part where someone's kind of wringing their hands and it says anal cancer across the screen. And what I thought was interesting, I looked at a follow-up video of the organization that did that, and they were saying, oh, we surveyed all of these members of the target demographic, and they said that after they saw this video, they were more like they told us that they were more likely to exhibit these desirable behaviors. And I was thinking, like, even if that is effective, which I sort of wonder about. I mean, if that desired health outcome, like using condoms, is not using condoms is stigmatized, are you really going to tell a researcher, oh yeah, I just watched that, oh no, and I'm going to go out and bareback tonight? And I think that there's some questionable methodology happening there. But also, even if that is an effective campaign, like, at what cost? And I think that's something that we need to be mindful of in public health. Yeah. Absolutely, and I think particularly with Gardasil, the HPV vaccine, I think one of the reasons why they focus on the cancer thing so much rather than the genital warts reduction is because they're trying to sell it to parents to get their young children. And it's a lot easier to sell.
Vaccine.
Yeah, it's a polio vaccine, not about your kid going out and having sex. And I think that it's the kind of industry acceptable amount of fear mongering, but also about marketing. Like sometimes fear is a more acceptable marketing tool.
And not just fear, but shame is, I know we're talking about trust and shame, but shame itself has to be, or just when I talk about shame, we talk about, I don't know, has anybody seen the check-in ad, where it's like either a photo of somebody in their panties, or it's a guy, it's a picture of him in his briefs, and there's the little, the Google pin or whatever, and it's like 46 people checked in here. And so it's like, okay, all of a sudden we're slut shaming, or sex shaming, and how is that going to make somebody feel who possibly has what would be considered having members of sexual partners feel about themselves or something like that? And not only does that then push that person away from even wanting to sit there and take care of their health, because they themselves don't see themselves within that. What are you trying to say about me? And then that just what is that race? just like, where does that go? And how is that even helpful to our kids in the first place? And so that's why, going back to maybe sometimes there are these good intentions, but this really poor execution. And so, luckily, there are a small fraction of sex positive people out there to call people out on that and try to change the messaging.
No, that was actually, you reminded me of a story that I really wanted to share. When we were having breakfast this morning, one of my clients, I was talking about this particular time that I was teaching. I was teaching a group of Masters in Public Health students. It was a women's studies class. So these are all mostly people who have actual experience in the healthcare, public health world. And I was talking about safer sex and more innovative methods of teaching people how to have safer sex. And I was co-presenting, and the slide that my co-presenter brought up was, I forget exactly what it said, but it was basically talking about how we can reduce stigma, particularly around people who've had larger numbers of sexual partners. And she just assumed, like, she's in the room full of her colleagues, and I had assumed this too, that we would all be on the same page with it is bad to stigmatize people for having sex, right? And then this one woman piped up, she's like, well, shouldn't we stigmatize people for having lots of sexual partners? And just went on. And we were both sort of momentarily stunned. Like, this is this woman, like, she is out there in the world doing public health work. And before I could even say anything, another person in the room very gracefully took her down with, I think that's actually a really problematic viewpoint, and I can't believe that a fellow public health professional would say stuff like this. And then I sort of made it a teachable moment. Like, this is, hey, even people who work in public health sometimes need to unpack some of our beliefs around sexuality. And that was a learning moment for all of us.
I got a quick. Something that comes up on the Herpes Opportunity forums, community supports one another, and new people come on sometimes and they're like, well, I mean, if herpes really is just a manageable skin condition, then I don't have to disclose, right? So that's like, I feel like that is exactly the razor's edge. It's like, okay, yeah, this is a manageable thing, like any sort of STD. It's a manageable thing these days. Not a big deal on one side of the coin, but on the other side of the coin, it's a big enough deal that you're gonna want to tell your partners. And that's where we need to be more precise.
We're going to talk a little bit about the way that our culture treats STIs. So this is just a Google search, image search on herpes jokes. When life gives you lemons, be glad it wasn't herpes. Never mind buying souvenirs or taking home herpes. Life sucks, have a pint. Diamonds are forever and so are herpes. Nothing says together forever like sharing the herpes virus. These are the messages that go out in the world, and people that don't have access to comprehensive sexuality education, this is all they have to go on. And this is what's informing their belief system and their attitudes about STIs. So this is what we are pushing back against. This kind of sarcastic, man, herpes would really suck attitude, and because it others people. It turns people into the other. That, well, my life may really suck, but at least I'm not that person. Because that person has herpes, and herpes would be the worst thing ever. HIV would be the worst thing ever. And so that is kind of a really good depiction of the attitudes that are out there that it took me 5 seconds to find on Google. And it's not just her. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And the fact that these, like, to add insult to injury, that these are supposed to be funny,
right,
is a whole nother thing.
Right. And it's not just herpes. It's also genital warts. Anthropomorphizing genital warts. I miss you like I miss genital warts. You've got genital warts. Your genital warts are so bad I can see them through your genes. And yeah, disgusting. And there are people that have this attitude because no one has ever taught them differently. And no one has ever, when these kind of jokes are made in public, said, you know what, that's actually a really insensitive thing to say. And I would like, if nothing else, to empower you when you're out with people in the world and teaching classes and working with clients and even just friends and family, when you hear these things, to challenge them, because the information that we're giving is out there, but it's sort of out there in small pockets. This is mainstream. So it's up to us to be the change and to model the behavior and let people know that this actually isn't okay. In a kind and compassionate way, because like Del said last night, it could be that they just don't have all the information. But we can give them that information. And that's empowering as educators and as professionals. That's something that we can do to change the world.
My best friend, she was just about to get married to this guy. It was us three eating dinner at their house, and something came up, and her soon-to-be husband says a snide comment about herpes. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, do I say something? And I just looked at him and I said, do you realize that I have herpes? And his face just went white. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I just thought that was a joke. I never actually have met someone with herpes.
As far as he knows.
So it's like, I think the part of this that it just highlights is the sexual shame in general. It's like, I can make fun of a concept. That's easy. But when the concept becomes my soon-to-be wife's best friend, whoa, talk about getting real.
So Adrial found this quote, and if you want to share a little bit about what this quote kind of means to you.
Yeah, this quote is from a TED Talk by Amy Mullins, and she was born, I think she was born without any legs. And so she's talking about, her whole talk is about disabilities, and like, do we use the word disabilities or empowered, and the words that we use are really powerful. So it's not just about the words. It's about what we believe about people when we name them with these words. It's about the value behind the words and how we construct those values. Our language affects our thinking and how we view the world and how we view other people. In fact, many ancient societies, including the Greeks and Romans, believed that to utter a curse verbally was so powerful because to say the thing out loud brought it into existence. So what reality do we want to call into existence? A person who is limited or a person who is empowered?
And I think some of you may have experienced that in the exercise that we did. You know, it was mentioned, when I said it out loud versus in my head, it made it different. And so language is such an important piece of the way that we talk about anything, but especially STIs, because with language we have a context, and we get to shape the context by the attitudes that we have and by educating. And so one thing that I really want to get into, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is the clean-dirty dichotomy. How many people have ever heard someone, it could have been you, but you don't have to out yourself, have ever heard someone use the phrase, I'm clean, or I just got tested, I'm clean? Yeah. That's a thing that happens. And the implication is, I'm good, healthy, functional, all of these things that you associate with clean. Moralistic. And then you have dirty. And dirty means broken, grungy, run down, damaged, nasty, and all of these other things. And so even if you are not intending to degrade someone by calling yourself clean because you're trying to represent the positive side, there's always the flip side of the coin. And so you're clean in contrast to what? This is my philosophy background coming out. So what are your thoughts on this clean-dirty dichotomy? All the way to the back.
Texas of how this beautiful green-eyed, red-haired white girl, sorry, or Caucasian girl, I'm not trying came in and she was getting sick regularly, and she was like getting thinner, and the doctor was going through all these tests but not testing her for HIV, and her friend kept mentioning, maybe we should test her for HIV. And the doctor was like, why should we test her for HIV? She's a teenage, beautiful, red-haired, green-eyed blue girl. There's no way that she could have HIV. And eventually, my friend ended up talking to another doctor who then had tested her, found out that she had like a CD4 count of like 6, and a major viral load, and we found out that the boyfriend had been cheating on her, and she things like that. And once again, it goes back to these public officials are you sleeping with any news African? Why would this beautiful white girl come up and possibly have HIV? Sometimes, it's this institutionalized stigma, or this clean versus going back to why would you do that to people? It's actually institutionalized, and these people don't see it until we have to actually get into these institutions, and it's not just only present these messages like we need to stop thinking about everything as in clean versus dirty, white versus black, young white versus supposedly dirty black, or anybody poor versus rich, because this is a huge issue which continues to perpetuate, or I'm sorry, to continue to help HIV, at least HIV infections persist in some of our communities because of thinking like this.
Absolutely. This is something I've heard from numerous people just about how little holistic human sexuality education is required of medical students, and I've heard examples of this changing. I know there's sex educators doing really valuable work in that area, but it's certainly not universal, and it certainly hasn't caught up with what our needs.
Yeah. So with the last about 10 minutes or so, since this panel is called Living with an STI, I do want to talk a little bit about people that are living with STIs, especially because there are people here who are brave enough to disclose, and thank you for that. That's really incredible. So I was really privileged to be on staff with the Herpes Opportunity last summer with Adrial, and to watch him take a group of 14 people who were coming from all over the world, who were in various stages of their diagnoses. Some had just been diagnosed, some had been living with herpes for years, but all were pretty well stuck in feeling a lot of self-hatred, a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation. And at the beginning of the weekend, we put words up on the board. Adrial stood in front of the room and said, give me words that you associate with having herpes. And the words were things like dirty, broken, diseased, disgusting, but those kinds of words. And throughout the course of the weekend, as people started to process and understand that this was just one small facet of their holistic being as a person, and start to love all of themselves and not just focus on this one part that bothered them, because we all have things about ourselves that we wish that we could change, but we do have to love ourselves as a whole. And by the end of the weekend, one of the participants who had been kind of quiet went up to the board, which had been up all weekend with the words, and erased a part of the board and wrote herpes schmerpies on the board. And it was so wonderful to watch that transformation happen over the course of the weekend, and watch these 14 strangers become like a family, and the community and the bonding that can happen with people who have shared life experiences. I've watched it happen in survivor communities, and the way that you can really connect with people who have been through similar things. So I really encourage us to create space for those types of interactions to happen. Adrial has this wonderful opportunity weekend. Raul, are there things in the HIV community where people that are living with HIV can connect with one another?
There isn't anything I know except like this, but I do know that at least when I was working with the Lesbian Center, but the organization right now also, they have programs, counseling. These are sex positive programs that people know they can continue to have fruitful sex lives as people living with HIV. And just this week, if I may make a quick mention to a humongous study that talked about if somebody is living with HIV and they have their viral load managed to an undetectable level. They're at near zero levels of transmitting the virus. So that's always a big important fact is why I push getting tested early so that way you can get on treatment early so that way you can make sure to get your viral load levels to undetectable because that's, you know, this was a 4-year study. They stopped it at 2 years to say, this is what we found within the first 2 years. A few years ago, there was an African study where they tested heterosexual couples who were in discordant couples and those with an undetectable level viral load. Once again, redundant, but same results. 96% less likely to transmit the virus. This one had a lot more gay couples in it. We found people who were having anal sex, including ejaculation, condomless sex, about 18 years now. They found once again that those who did contract HIV in the study were from people outside of the relationship, not from people within the relationship. But 2 more years to go until we get the full study analysis.
Sure. Well, I mean, since we're kind of in wrap-up phase, I mean, like, I kind of am seeing the threads through everything that's been said, and it's either a very individual experience, like the people who have disclosed even just in this room that they have herpes, and then it's a society experience, and those are at the same time 2 different conversations and also blend together, and really it's about self-love and self-acceptance. And whether or not you have herpes or an STI or whatever, if you can walk away from this panel having more understanding, having more compassion, then we can shift this in our society through loving ourselves, through you loving you, and then that actually, it's like this whole Buddhist Zen kind of thing, like overflow your cup, right? And then that affects the world. I think that's got to be key as we fight the good fight, that we can't kind of skip past ourselves while accepting society.
So with that, we are going to be putting together a resource list and linking to all of the things that we mentioned. And so if you are interested in receiving that, up here we have a list. You can put your name and email address. We will happily send that out to you, and I can even chat with Carol and get the information that she mentioned and put that in there. Thank you so much for coming. I really, really appreciate all of you being here. We will be around. We have the 20-minute break between the next session, so if you have questions that you wanted to ask us privately, we will be here, or throughout the rest of the weekend. Thank you so much.